I've lived in France since 2010. I made this video to describe how things started for me, just to give a bit of background, so hopefully you'll understand where I'm coming from if you watch any of my other videos. If you're wondering, yes, I am a witch, and have been for over 45 years now, having heard the calling in my very early teens. Those were the days when books on the subject were few and far between. No internet, no computers, no pagan meetings. Hell, there weren't even any mobile phones. No, I can hear you gasp. Those times never really existed. How would life have worked? You can't still be alive and remember those times. How did you communicate? How did you learn about things? How did you know what was going on? Simple answer, my friends. Slates and runes. No, but seriously, I'm not that old. But we did do things the old way. We read, we wrote, yes, with pen and ink on paper. We talked to people, in the flesh, no less. And most of all, we had time to be still and think and actually spend time within nature, experiencing what life is about and the real magic of this world. If that's what we needed to do, and I guess I did. I guess I was lucky in many respects. I never had any set religion imposed on me. Yes, we had religious education in school, and I went to a Methodist scout group and attended some Sunday schools because of it. But it was just a part of life. It's just what people did. I can't say I ever really believed any of the stories, and it just drifted over me. I guess I grew up what you'd probably nowadays call a bit of a loner. Yes, I had a small circle of friends, but I enjoyed being on my own, and always made sure I could be by going for long walks. We lived on the outskirts of a large city in Yorkshire, in England, and it only took about 15 minutes by foot to be out in the countryside. And this I could do whenever I wanted, for as long as I wished, within reason, of course. Anyway, I suppose I was about 13 when I began to wonder if there was a God or not. Not through any fervent need to know or anything like that. I was just growing up, and those things pop into your head. Whether you want them to or not, they just appear. As my usual walking route used to take me past an old Norman chapel before I'd descend down a hill and over a beck into the woods. Well, on that day, something must have been on my mind, and I thought I'd pop in and see if God was up for a chat. As you do, don't you? Anyway, I knew the church would be unlocked, and as I was passing... Sorry, I just got distracted by a butterfly then. And as I was passing, why not? The setting was a picture. That old stone chapel, standing surrounded by its walled circular graveyard. The gates next to the ancient stile in the wall snapping back into place on the spring as I walked through and trod the worn stone flagged path to the door. It must have been springtime, because I remember the vast drifts of daffodils that meandered amongst the headstones and leant over the low, rusty railings around some of the grander graves. It really was very picturesque. Then there it was in front of me, the magnificent, deep stone Norman arch, intricately carved and framing perfectly the heavy, weathered wooden doors restrained by the metal hinges that hung within its frame. I don't remember how long I stared at that before slowly opening the door and stepping inside. I really didn't want anyone else to be there. Not at that moment. Not in that time. And as my eyes became accustomed to the gloom, I saw I was in luck, and sat quietly on one of the simple wooden pews and took in the surroundings. It was cool and quiet. There was a small window over the altar shedding its light along the aisle, almost to where I sat. and two large paintings on either side, their images almost indiscernible through the aged varnish, and they were there hanging on the plain stone walls. The altar itself was simple but dressed, and the candles new and unlit. Well, several minutes must have passed, taking in the atmosphere, feeling that residual spirit of the thousands of people who have been here over the hundreds of years. Their combined belief and hopes, the happy and the sad times, looking for answers to their problems, drawing on their faith and their belief in the power of God. I could almost hear them, see their faces, feel their presence as if caught within the very fabric of the place. And now it was my turn. I remember I spoke my thoughts in my mind and waited for what seemed like an eternity. And I just sat there, quietly contemplating and waiting. But there was nothing. I spoke again, but this time out loud in case that's what I needed to do. But still, nothing. After a while, I guess I started to feel a little betrayed. Here I was, of my own free will, wanting to have some kind of a connection, wanting to communicate, and all I got was silence. Not even a sense that something or someone was watching or listening. Just nothing. It was like there was no God in this holy place for me on that day. I guess I left with a certain degree of annoyance, squinting as I emerged from the gloom back into the sunshine. I'd certainly connected with the place, the history, the atmosphere, the residual energy, but there was nothing else. And I have to admit, it was with a sense of relief and almost belonging that I walked down the hill and back into what I considered to be my bit of woodland, where I spent the rest of the day. I remember I visited that chapel a couple more times and even went to an evening service, but any connection of a religious sort continued to elude me. And eventually I just stopped going, preferring instead to be surrounded by nature and resolving life's problems, sitting in contemplation with my back to a tree beside the brook. It was midsummer when my beliefs really manifested themselves. And now I look back, I realise just how special it was. I can't help wondering if in these technological days it still happens like this for people. I'd gone on one of my walks, which as I said I used to do regularly, and I'd ended up lying in the grass by a small, overgrown old quarry deep within the woods, enjoying the peace and quiet and revelling in the warmth of the afternoon sun. I'd closed my eyes and was listening to the birdsong when, without any surprise, I started to hear the faint music of panpipes. Now this was before I really knew what they were, or indeed what they sounded like. They did not startle me, and indeed at that moment it seemed perfectly natural. And I just lay there, soothed by the sweetness, and it was very sweet, the sweetness of the melody mingling with the sounds of nature. Now I know I lay for some time before reality began to rouse me from my peaceful state. Sitting up, I looked about me, and there was no one. There were no houses nearby from where the music could have come from. I was entirely alone, as my search of the area afterwards, through curiosity, bore witness to. The pipes had stopped when I'd started to move around, and the afternoon was back to normal, except colours seemed more vibrant, and everything had a more I'm not sure how to describe it, but everything felt more real. And there was a definite sense of, well, expectation and promise, and I suppose mystery. Yet I really felt that this is where I belonged. This is where I would find answers. This is where I could change things and where I could be heard. I know it sounds strange. It still does to me after all these years. But from that very moment, my life had changed. I spent as much time as I could within those woods after that. It's where I would go whenever I needed answers. It was where I would read and learn, and where I experimented with my first magical steps. And it was from that moment that I met people by chance, in places you wouldn't expect, who gave me information and pointers, and a whole series of events followed that led me on the path, with a conviction and knowing that has been with me ever since. So, did I ever meet any form of deity? No, not in the flesh, so to speak. But I did tangibly feel them, both of them. I heard them, and I could communicate with them. And I could clearly see the way they laid before me. Now I could go on about my journey and experiences, but in this video I just want to describe to you how it all started. Well, for me anyway. And perhaps, if there's any interest, I'll tell you more of my story. But in the meantime, I would like to hear about where and how it all started for you. Until the next time, goodbye.